Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Hello, everyone, and I am perhaps even more excited than normally to be talking about marketing topics today, because today it's in the intersection with one of my, what can you call it, like private passions, which is football, European European way of playing football and marketing. So, Brett, as immediately when I saw you posting that post about Cledara joining Cambridge United as a sponsor, it really intrigued my interest in, like, why did they do this, and what's the math behind it? What are you trying to get out of it, and how can I become a sponsor of a football stadium so I can be in those pictures as well? So super happy that you said yes to talk a little bit with me today, Brett. But before we head into the specific case, maybe you can introduce a little bit about yourself and also explain a little bit to those who don't know what Cledara is.
For sure. And thank you very much for having me and the opportunity to talk about football and call it work. I think that's a lot of fun. So my name's Brad Van Leeuwen. I'm the co-founder of Cledara. Cledara is a SaaS management platforms that help finance teams get visibility, control, and scalable processes over the cloud software they use to run their company. We have about 1,000 customers. Those customers are everywhere between the Baltics to California. And our customers have now bought more than £1 billion of software through our platform. So we're really excited to take it really to the next level, and getting the word out using our partnership with Cambridge is one of the ways we're doing that.
That's super cool, Brett. If one of your salespeople are listening now, we're actually starting. We're like Series A, around 50 people now. So we're getting to that point of time where you actually want to know where all your subscriptions are. So maybe they should start reaching out to the ideal personas in our company at some point.
You've nailed it. It's exactly 50 people.
Okay.
And it comes from our experience in the company I worked at before Cledara. I just put my Amex on the table when we were 5 people. And at that point, 5 people, you want to do 2 things in a startup. One is write code and the other sell it.
Yeah.
And so everything else was kind of vanity or cosplaying a big company.
Yeah.
And that worked well. People would just come to my desk and pick up my Amex. And we only had one process in the business. And this was really to protect my interest, was that if you didn't bring my credit card back when you were done, you had to buy drinks for the office that night. And that was obviously really popular, especially when the card didn't come back.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what happened by the point we were 300 people. We had no idea what software we had. We had no idea who was using it, where the data was going. And that started to slow down customer acquisition because, well, some customers rightly care about information security.
Yeah, and maybe, Brett, now I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning what it did, but maybe you can kind of just start by kind of stating the facts about what you guys have been doing at Cledara together with Cambridge.
What we've done is Cledara's into a 5-year agreement to take naming rights of what is now known as the Cledara Abbey Stadium. So Cambridge United, a club in League One in England, previously played at the Abbey Stadium. It's been that way for decades. And as of January 3 this year, and for the next 5 years, it's now known as the Cledara Abbey Stadium. In all communications, you can see the sign there, middle of the stand, opposite the TV cameras, in the middle of the pitch. So every game, we're now on Google Maps as the Cledara Abbey Stadium as well. So really great SEO. And every time a game's covered, the BBC's mentioning Cledara.
Yeah. That's so funny. I like, I don't even know where to start, but some of the things I could imagine being super nice, tangibly coming out of it. You mentioned like national TV stadiums starting to ask you questions. How did that happen? Was it hard? Did you need a PR agency to facilitate the contacts? And how could you kind of orchestrate? Because I mean, like a club in League One getting a new sponsor, I mean, does not necessarily sound super newsworthy, but how did you pull that component off?
There's a few things. So how did we originate the opportunity to sponsor, and then how did it get picked up by the press? The opportunity to sponsor actually came via one of our investors. There's a person in the works of that fund that does a lot of things with children with diabetes.
Yeah.
And his charity had previously worked with the club, who's very, very active in the community, to support that cause and get children with diabetes involved in football and build awareness of it. He became aware that they were looking for a sponsor and offered to broker the introduction. And we did our homework, we thought about it, we accepted that and eventually did the deal. In terms of how the press came to be involved, this has been one of our big learnings through the process of this.
Yeah.
So we're all used to, dealing with TechCrunch, right? Like everyone's got Mike Butcher or Alex Wilhelm or Ron Miller on their PR list, and they're going out, and they all get bombarded by tech companies saying that a tech company did something.
Yeah, I failed to impress them with my pitches.
And they're good people, but they just can't cover it all. And frankly, It's not all newsworthy.
Yeah.
But outside of the technology bubble, where real people live, other things happen. Yeah. And, the thing is, in the football press, it's not that they're having to report on 10,000 SaaS companies, right? They're reporting, for example, the English sports press that's covering football might be covering 80, 100 teams.
Yeah.
There are journalists from all the major networks assigned to cover each club or each region, right down the leagues. And so you're not having to make noise among 10,000 potential startups pitching 10,000 stories. You're in a much smaller pond where there's a dedicated journalist or several dedicated journalists covering each little part of the pond. And so it's very, very different.
That's a good point. And like most of their stories will probably be around, is this player playing? Is he injured? Who's doing what? And then suddenly this stadium announcement comes, and then that's something completely different.
Absolutely. And to give you a story about how closely tied these journalists are to these clubs, one of the things you must not do on a football pitch that's used professionally is walk on it for, unnecessarily, right? Because these are all lovingly cared for, rain, hail, or shine by teams of people who dedicate their lives to it. And it's so much a rule that, for example, Alex, who's the CEO of Cambridge United, will not walk across the line onto the pitch unless specifically invited by the groundsman. And during actually one of those videos that you showed, we were filming that from the middle of the pitch, looking back at the stand saying Cladara Abbey Stadium. And the guy from the BBC just walked out on the pitch, and myself and Alex stopped at the line because we knew the rules. And the guy from BBC is like, "Oh, don't worry. I know the groundsman. I've known him for 40 years.
Okay.
He'll be okay with us coming on the pitch." Right. And so the relationship and the length of that relationship between the journalists and these clubs, across decades. So
it needs to pay respect.
Exactly. But the journalists have, they're fans or they're part of the club's journey as well, in a very different way to say, Mike Butcher might be part of Monzo's journey. It's just different.
Cool. I got a little bit ahead of myself there, but I would love to go inside the engine room of, so you said there was some kind of one of your investors that had this idea. How did you guys react to it? What was the kind of thought process that took place? And how did you manage to convince yourself to get to a yes as well at the end of that internal discussion?
The first part of it's cultural. So since Cladara started, we've always thought, how can we push the boundary? How can we move faster? So when we launched and there were 7 people, we went from incorporating the company to getting our MVP out, which included a MasterCard within 90 days, right? It had never been done before globally for someone to do that fast with MasterCard. And I know that was true because Visa reached out to us, how did you do it? And so we've always had this idea of pushing the boundaries. Another way we push the boundary, obviously, is in sales and marketing. So for the first several years of the company's life, we'd push a press release out to journalists every month. Yeah. Right? Not to say that all those 12 stories a year were earth-shattering and newsworthy, but we wanted to build relationships with journalists. We wanted them to think about us. So we always were aware, looking for opportunities to get something newsworthy. The other thing we do is we always try to do things that are different. right?
Yeah.
In whatever form that may be. And, over the years, Cladara and the other tech companies I've been in before, my model of marketing, it's really evolved. So
Yeah.
I'm here in New York, Fifth Avenue is there. Fifth Avenue, to give an example, right? It's a long street. It starts at Washington Park, finishes at Central Park. On both sides of that, really long road, there are infinite stores.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So many stores. And every store tries to pull you in. During the holidays, they'll put like fancy window displays, lights, they'll put music to pull people in. And they have to do that because they've got a lot of competition for your attention. Now let's think about the internet, right? So we're all technology companies. We exist on the internet. Now, the internet is if the internet were a street, it would be much longer than Washington Park to Central Park. It would be like infinite length. So the question is, how do you get a prospective buyer to stop at your website? It's really hard to make a website stand out so people are going to come to it, right? There's only so many things you can do in Webflow. If the internet is like a high street of infinite length, you need to do things to bring attention to you. So we've always looked for these edges, and certainly Cambridge United gave us a way to stand out from the crowd. But what was interesting to me was when there's two parts of all these things. So what is the ROI direct and what is the ROI indirect? Cambridge is not, the Bay Area. Cambridge is not London. Cambridge is Cambridge, right? So what we realized very quickly was we weren't marketing necessarily through this deal to Cambridge United fans. Though Cambridge United fans are important because, it's the only professional sports team in a city where there are 5,000 startups and 70,000 people that work in tech, right? It's the home of AI and biotech. So we were not only marketing to the Cambridge United fans. Like we knew how many deals we had to do each year within the Cambridge United ecosystem to be able to directly say, like, that's the ROI from this. What's really important is what is the indirect ROI, right? Where does that come from? Well, you can get to Cambridge within 45 minutes of London. So a lot of our activations, we have a box at every game. We're hosting a tournament off-season 24th of April. Founders, operators, VCs. If you want to come, drop me an email. It's just brad@cladara.com. We haven't announced it publicly yet, but I think the first time we've said it publicly. So we'll be hosting these each year so people can come from London. We've already got people that want to come from our customers across Europe and even here from New York that want to participate in that.
I think I have to start making some YouTube videos of myself juggling the ball or something like that to get the
exactly. And so then there's the indirect ones like that builds news. Like since the announcement went out, also Cambridge has had an important role in many people's lives. People studied there and have moved all around the world. So I've had selfies of prospects. So prospects have sent selfies to us saying, "Hey, this is me as a ball boy in the 1980s."
Yeah.
Right. I'm the kid in the front with the messy hair holding the ball, or, I studied there. And even beyond that, every time Cambridge United's on television for their games, their average viewership is more than 500,000 people.
Oh, that many.
And every time the camera, 500,000. And so every time the camera pans to the middle of the pitch, or every time the announcer says, "Welcome back to the Cladara Abbey Stadium," there's 500,000 people that are hearing your brand.
Super interesting. I think that's a good way to split it, Brett, that there's some math you do around customers coming from the city, but the even bigger return is all this activation you can do of this really good story of you guys doing something completely different. And I didn't consider the component of how many people actually studied in Cambridge and then moved on to all parts of the world afterwards.
Exactly. And, the other thing is that Cambridge is a globally famous city. So
they're
in the US, right? There are not going to be many Cambridge United fans here.
No,
right?
No.
Though, I've already met a couple here. Having said that, many people studied there. Many people have moved here. And it's just an inherently positive thing. So it's not polarizing, right? We can talk about why we were comfortable selecting Cambridge. Like there's a lot of work we did with the club to understand what type of club they were and what was important to them. But it was not polarizing, right? It's a company doing something positive for a very community-centric club. Even if you were a fan of like Oxford's football team, you're not hating on it. Right?
Next year you'll see Dreamdata at the Oxford. That's funny. That's really funny. I wrote down some questions. So I'm just peeking down here. But did you give any thoughts to kind of the length? As now it's a 5-year deal, so that it's quite a long time in a SaaS company's life. What kind of thoughts went into that particular dimension?
Yeah, so there's two parts of that. So number one is if you do enter a deal with a sports team, you need to think what your objectives are. And you have to pick the sponsorship option that suits that. So you could have like the name on the front of the shirt or the one on the shoulder or, the signage around the pitch. You can do the stadium as we did. You can be a technology partner.
Yeah.
All these things. And you have to pick the one that matches your objectives, right? So if you want to get the name on the front of the shirt, you know that people are going to be walking around the street with your shirt if you do it with a popular club. And maybe you're doing that to get like, I don't know, brand recognition or for a short period of time. What our objective was, we taking a step back, what does Cladara do? Number one is we handle a company's second most important infrastructure. So they've got their people, which are their most important asset. The second is their software that keeps them in business, right?
Yeah.
And so companies have to trust us, right? They have to believe that we're going to be around for the long term. So we wanted to pick a type of sponsorship that reinforced that message. And so we didn't go for the shirt, we didn't go for the signage around the stadium, we went for the stadium itself.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, when you look at that type of sponsorship, you're naming a place. If that place's name changes every 5 minutes, no one knows what it is. No one adjusts. But think of another League One club, Bolton. They used to play at the Reebok Stadium.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, right. So you know it. And I don't think Reebok sponsored it for years. I'm not sure, but it's still called the Reebok in everyone's mind.
Yeah.
And so the ROI of these kinds of things go up the longer that you do it. I knew about the Reebok as a kid growing up in Australia before I knew what Reebok itself was, that it was a shoe brand. Right. So for that type of thing, you need to invest for a long time because a lot of the value, if you do it for long enough, it could be known as that forever. Right. And that was definitely something that we were looking for. How do we tie this marketing activity to our objective that we want to send the market? Is that, we are here, we're building for the future. We're here for the long haul. You can trust us, with your £1 billion of software that you're buying through us and your critical infrastructure that keeps you in business.
Ah, beautiful. That makes it makes sense. But I guess it is a long commitment. I guess can be a little bit hard to say yes to also when you're sitting and before signing the contract.
That was in a way the easiest part of it.
Yeah.
Because, your objectives. Like none of us are here to build something that doesn't work, right? So you do all sorts of things that invest for the future, right? The code that your engineers are refactoring today, right? To make your platform more scalable, not to Dreamdata, but just generally, right? They're refactoring today so that it can handle the load in the future, right? You're always investing today for the future. And this was just another example of that. And I think, obviously, you have to be thoughtful, right, about your money. And so, though it was 5 years, these deals, I won't talk too much about the deal, except to say that, you do pay them, in installments over the life of the deal.
Yeah.
But, this deal, it kind of aligns everything, right? Like in time, obviously, as we grow, right, or continue to grow, and as the club continues to march up the leagues, in a way, I want to lock that in. I want to lock that in today, right? And I'll give you an example. After we did the deal, or in the process of doing the deal, we found out that Sky Sports was going to broadcast I think it was 5 times as many Cambridge United games next season, right? And if each one gets 500,000 views,
and that price
then,
quickly.
Yeah, and hopefully Wrexham get promoted, and we are all on Netflix with that documentary. So there's lots of opportunities here. But the point is, you have to know what you're allocating capital to, and you have to have a plan. And coming back to the other thing I wanted to say, if we can generate an ROI from that direct conversion, right, where we're inviting people to games, we're inviting people to our summer tournament, we're inviting people, we're sending out Cambridge United shirts with our prospects' names on the back as an activation in Cambridge. If we can generate direct business from that covers the costs, everything else is upside. And I can tell you, if you think about what you might spend on, say, Google ads,
Yeah, it's super
right? There's
key.
nobody's taking a selfie of themselves in front of your very well worded Google ad and sharing it on the internet, but they absolutely are doing it in front of the Cladara Abbey Stadium.
It's so interesting. Like the last few years, I've continuously seen these articles where the prices on all digital ad platforms are just going through the roof because they have been really good. They have been really great for targeting, etc. But it's a marketplace, so if everyone uses it, the price will just continue to go up. And as a company of 50 people, you're competing against any company in the world, and they have a lot more money than you, so they can buy the attention of the users instead of you. So yeah, that I really find it interesting to think about how to get attention to a brand in a different way than just the at least the classic tech startup where you run ads on the internet and try to retarget them and build a newsletter and stuff like that.
I mean, that's true, right? I'd be disappointed, in fact, if a marketer on this call hasn't updated some of their Google campaigns.
Yeah.
Right? There's literally no barrier to entry for anyone to put a Google ad up. Yeah. And so, the reason they've gotten more expensive is that market's really efficient. And the clearing price eventually of those paid ads will be, the point at which the last marginal buyer of that ad slot can't get ROI. Right. So it's going to favor companies with lower costs of capital. So particularly companies in the US that are able to raise more at higher valuations. Yeah. You're competing against them. If you're a European company, you're already on the losing side of that trade. You're competing against companies that have got higher ACVs targeting the same keywords. So it's very, very hard because it's a very efficient market. These kind of real world placements, they're less efficient. They're harder. They take more time. Like there's a limited amount of football clubs. So if you have to back your contract, Exactly. And, you have to learn how to do things like print large metal signs to put on the football stadiums. There's just a lot more barriers to do that. And, someone with a credit card and a web browser can't do that while watching a webinar.
How many employees are you, Brad, at Cladara?
We're about 70.
70, okay. So I guess that it also takes a bit of a joint team effort to really just stand this one up and also to activate it afterwards.
Yeah, we put together I hate the kind of corporate speak, but we put together a cross-functional team, right? Sales, marketing. We had a specific project manager on it as well. I was directly involved. Still am. We have weekly calls to make sure that we're driving all our activations, that we're starting new ones, we're sharing what we're learning and iterating. And obviously through that journey, different people have been involved at different times. So our marketing team was really focused on even debating the name, like should it be Cladara Abbey Stadium or the Cladara Abbey Stadium?
Yeah.
What should the signage look like? What should the announcement look like? What should the PR look like? Now it's more shifted towards sales, where we're driving specific target accounts towards activations from companies in our pipe. And so but what's been really great about it is that, football is very ingrained in the culture, in a lot of cultures around the world, certainly global, well, in all the places where we have team members, the US, the UK, and Spain, right? Sport is an inherent part of the culture.
Yeah, so it completely intrigued me.
Everyone in the company wants to be part of it. So it's been a great way to build a lot of momentum into a new year and a new quarter for us as well.
Super cool. If you were if another company, say Dreamdata, were considering trying to do a similar activity like you, like sponsoring a football stadium or a sports sponsorship in general, what would you say kind of is the thinking that you need to go through to, first of all, to arrive whether it's right for you, and when can you say yes to it? And maybe lastly, what kind of sports sponsorship should you then choose? I don't know if you have an opinion about that as well, but at least what is the good advices for other companies who are now inspired by you, like trying to find out what should they sponsor?
Yeah, I think so. The way we approached it is what type of sponsorship matches our objectives. So I've talked about that already and how we ended up with the stadium. I think the other thing is to work out, almost regardless of the sport, because we've looked at other sports. We looked at the Denver Broncos. We've looked at an NFL. We've looked at a bunch of different things. So there's the objectives. There's also the club. right? So because, you know, a 5-year deal, we are mutually attaching our reputations together.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they have to trust us and we have to trust them. And the foundation of trust are the values. And so we spend a lot of time with different members of the, you know, the executive, even the board of Cambridge United, to understand, you know, what are their objectives as a team? What are their values as a business? One thing I really liked about them is that they're very tied into the community. So for example, in the week, they've got a lot of like conference rooms and things at the Cladara Rugby Stadium. They could be renting those out for business events and things and making more money. Actually, what they're using them for is for their foundation to do things like let elderly people from the community that don't get out much come and have like lunch together. Or especially in winter where heating's really expensive, come into the stadium. It's, you know, the conference rooms, have a cup of tea, the lunch, have lunch. Nice. It's really warm. So this type of tied in with it, but also they were not the type of club that wanted to kind of burn and churn their way up the leagues, right? They didn't want to go all in, make expensive signings, risk going bankrupt in the hope that they get promoted. They had a plan to improve and
very nice
over time. But they also were not willing to sacrifice their values to do that. So, you know, if you look around the stadium, they wouldn't accept any sponsorship from things like sports betting or crypto, where they didn't feel that was conducive to their family and community values. And so they stepped away from lucrative financial opportunities in order to live those values. And so I thought between that, you know, this is not something that, you know, in 12 months' time, we're going to be embarrassed to be part of. We're going to be wanting to contribute to and be part of. But that was super important in the process as well.
If you were to go out, would you have to like email club by club, or are these things organized in any like marketplace or stuff like that?
They're generally not. So every club has a person whose job it is to bring revenue into the club through these kind of partnerships. So they generally have a commercial director who's tasked with this. There are agencies that do kind of try to broker these opportunities for a fee, but in general, the market's really inefficient because let's say Dreamdata wanted to sponsor, I don't know, Oxford. Yeah, you're not allowed to, but no, kidding. So you want to sponsor Oxford, right? Like, how does an agency know that they should contact Dreamdata? How does the club know how to reach out to you? You may not even speak the same language. And I don't mean English. I mean, just like what's important for you, what's important for them. How do they know that they can contribute to your business objectives? And how do you know that they're even thinking about what yours might be? So it's really, you need to spend time with it.
Somebody should make a Cladara for sports sponsorships as well. So, you know, when is the stadium running out? When is the shirt running out? And what's the price of it?
Yeah, and this is in a way the opportunity, right? So whilst it's really, the market's really efficient for online advertising, is really inefficient
so
for the real world.
Yeah, I totally get it. Like a really good opportunity could be very cheap because they have not heard about all the people who might be interested in it. So the price stays down.
And you see this, for example, with billboards and bus stops in the Bay Area, right? So I think it's public, and they've said it publicly. Brex at some point did a buyout of basically all the billboards in San Francisco. It cost them I think it was $2 million for a long period of time, right? Which is a lot of money, but it's actually not a lot of money when you consider the reach. Rippling does all the bus, or used to do all the bus stops in San Francisco. It just before SASTA in Barcelona, SASTA Europa year before last, we did the arrivals hall at Barcelona airport. So Cladara did a buyout of the digital ads in the airport. Now, to do that, I had to get someone on my team that spoke Catalan to call the airport to say, hey, airport, how do I do that? And you know what they said? We don't know. And it took some time, and it ended up costing almost nothing. But that's just because there was not a process on either side to conduct business.
Yeah, it's funny.
And the net result was we spent, low single-digit thousands for every arrival for SASTA in Europe to go through the arrivals hall and see a Cladara ad before they came to the event and then saw our booth.
You know what? I think actually the first time I heard the brand name Cladara was that exact conference. So something in that play definitely did work.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
but then you were
Tiny.
probably smaller than what you are today as well.
We were very tiny, and that's another example of us trying to find novel things. And
Absolutely.
the other thing I want to say about it is that when it comes to marketing, right? Of course, you can put ads. Of course, you can retarget. Of
Yeah.
course, you can, even in sales, you can do outbound, right? Try
Yeah.
to create the demand. But the reality is that the way people buy, they buy when they're ready. They buy when there's some sort of event that triggers it, or it gets to the top of their to-do list. Something about it becomes important. And, you can get lucky sometimes with outbound, and someone will say, hey, how did you know I was thinking about you? The reality was you just sent 40 emails that day, and that person happened to be thinking about it. But if you do these things with brand, you're there meeting the prospect where they are in their life. So that when something happens in their life and they're thinking, gee, we lost all this money because we hit that renewal for that tool that we're not going to use or haven't been using for ages, but we forgot about it, so we had to pay it. They go, oh, wow, we should have done Cloudara. We should have had that set up and it wouldn't have happened. And then they call us, right? And that's the best way to do sales, is meet the customer where they are, help them understand what you do, and be ready when they have the need. And then they convert well, very low CAC. It's fantastic.
That's super cool, Brad. Like by nature, I'm very happy about the spreadsheet exercises for marketing, trying to, okay, what's it gonna cost? What can I see come out of it, etc. What is the math piece that one needs to kind of set up to calculate this to a yes? What are the upsides, the downsides, the risks, etc.? What is it that we want to have in place here? I guess that's like anything from like club and values to awareness to activation to how many opportunities do we see related to this, etc.
As I said, the way we thought about this is a brand exercise, right? So we thought about direct and indirect, and we knew what the cost was. And the approach was, do we think the number of new accounts that we have to win per year is commensurate to the possibility to do that, right? So, we looked at the 5,000 tech companies in Cambridge. We looked at how many deals we needed to close among that 5,000. So we could say, okay, is that number reasonable? Are we setting ourselves up for fail, or does that seem like an alley-oop, right? And when we did the maths, it felt like an alley-oop, right? And so the way we thought about it is, if the direct maths kind of let us de-risk it, the long tail benefits are really strong. Like I see,
that's super smart.
I see
also, by just making the decision about those 5,000 companies, you can also, start sending direct mails. Like you can even you can get in a car and drive around to all those 5,000 companies.
We've literally sent like handwritten notes with Cambridge United shirts to a bunch of companies, and they're already converting. And look, that has an incremental cost, but not very much. It's a little bit like, I see Andrew from Paddle, right, where they did their payment in space. They sent a phone and did a payment to space, and did the first payment in space, right? So that had a cost, I'm sure. And I'm sure someone said, oh, I signed up to Pleo because I saw your payment in space thing, and that's quite cool. But they get this long tail of saying, hey, those crazy people at Paddle just do really funky things, and it's really engaging with their marketing. That gets the long tail of conversion. And actually, probably that's where the bulk of the value is. And it's definitely the same for us with Cambridge United.
This has been so interesting, Brad. Is there any obvious questions that I'm missing right now? Have you played Football Manager as a teenager?
I still play it sometimes on long flights. So no, still do that. But honestly, I'm Australian. I grew up playing cricket, grew up playing Australian football and basketball. I've never played football. And when I moved to London 2008, I realized I had to start supporting football, because that was the kind of the bedrock of the social system in the UK, right? That's how you interacted with people. And so I picked a team. I picked Fulham. It was good fun. Now I have a second team. I have Fulham and Cambridge. But this is the social fabric of society, right? And this gives everyone the opportunity for Cloudara to be inserted into that social fabric.
Yeah, that's really cool. If people wanna know more about or talk with you, what is kind of the channel? And if they want to try out Cloudara, what would people do?
So what do you do?
I see
Well,
Eric here is showing the next game, Cheltenham Town versus Cambridge on February 10.
and I'll be at the game. Eric, I think, lives in Cheltenham, so he'll be there. I'll be at the game. I'll be at the Cambridge game this weekend against, I think, Fleetwood Town. A bunch of VCs are coming. We've got a few billion worth of funds under management coming to join me at the game. So if you see me there and you want an introduction, say hi. If you want to learn more, you can email me, brad@cladara.com. Very happy to talk through in a little more detail how we did it. I can introduce you to the long list of clubs that reached out and asked if we would also sponsor their stadium. So happy to broker those introductions. And if you want to try Cladara, actually one more thing, you should definitely email me, brad@cladara.com. Come to our summer tournament on the pitch at the Cladara Abbey Stadium on the 24th of April. We've got medical staff, we've got real referees.
Yeah.
And after all that, if you've got room for a SaaS management platform in your life, which everyone on this call almost certainly does, we've just released a new free plan that you can get started on in 15 minutes and start getting visibility and control of your SaaS.
Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It's been like hugely inspirational for how we can think differently about the ads or the marketing that we're doing at Dreamdata as well. So I hope the people listening are experiencing the same thing.
Thank you, everyone.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.